Nothing says Canada like bagged milk, right? It's a format that first became popular in the 1970s. That's when Canada adopted the metric system. Remember that? Many products were sold by volume, like milk. They had to be resized and repackaged. Eventually, consumers in Western Canada turned to milk jugs as their preferred products. But milk bags, they continued to reign supreme in Ontario and the Maritimes and in Quebec. That's until now. Buying habits have changed, decreasing the demand for the famous milk bags, so much so that many experts believe they will disappear from the market. Jordan Lebel is a professor of food marketing at Concordia University. He is a founding member and co-leader of the Concordia Food Culture Research Group. He joins us on the line from Montreal. Professor Lebel, welcome to Breakaway.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Now, how do you explain the decline in sales for 4-liter milk bags?
Well, shifts started to operate or happen prior to the pandemic, which in effect really accelerated some changes in Canadians' purchasing and consumption habits. We now have very modern, hectic lives. You take a single household. It's not rare for all its members to have sort of asynchronous meals. Everybody does their own little thing. Everybody prefers one type of milk versus another. Not that long ago, every pantry, every household in Canada probably had 4 or 5 types of cereals, but one type of milk. And now you go into any household and very high likelihood that you'll find more than one type of milk. Alternative milks have gained in popularity. Also, new sort of value added traditional milk. What I have in mind here are high protein cow's milk, for example, whether they're vanilla or chocolate flavored or raspberry flavored. So those are all very high margin value added products that retailers tend to prefer over the famous bags. You speak with any retailers right now, they'll be quick to point out a lot of those bags, they're kind of cumbersome in terms of handling. They sometimes puncture, creating a mess. And that's one reason you typically find them at the bottom shelf, so that if they do drip, they won't drip over everything else. So I think some members of the supply chain would welcome doing away with the bags. But then again, for some consumers, it's a bit of nostalgia. It's a very strong attachment to this form of packaging.
I was just speaking with François Warnette, who was our technician today on the show, and he has 2 young children, and he was telling me it's a headache. Milk bags are a headache. And when you look at it in a long term, in terms of a year's purchase of milk, there's a lot of loss there. The milk just falls to the ground. The kids can't handle it properly. Anyways, you mentioned the increase in sales for alternative milks or value-added milk. Now, these are taking up more shelf space. How do you explain this consumer preference?
Well, there's a bit of an explosion in consumer preferences. Certainly when I was a student studying food marketing, we were told you can easily segment consumers. There's not that much variability in terms of people's preferences. Nowadays, everybody feels they're unique. Everybody expresses their lifestyle, their preferences through, in part, what we wear, what we eat, and so on. And milk is just one more expression of that. Some people prefer almond milk, soy milk, oat milk, and on top of that, the dairy industry has also, to be fair, innovated in some respects. You now have these sort of high protein chocolate milk, for example, which are quite handy if you're on your way to the gym, if you have a busy lifestyle, you skip lunch and you need to replenish. So all of those alternative products have been sort of gnawing tens of percentages of market share from traditional milk. And if we're going to do away with some form of packaging, then why not those famous bags? Because you pointed out in the intro, I mean, there has not been a major packaging innovation in that category for decades. So maybe it's time that we start looking at something else. But I know for some consumers, it's going to be hard to give those bags up.
No, as you mentioned, there's a sense of belonging associated with these milk bags almost. I heard Mr. Lebel say, Professor Lebel, you said something like premium milks. I think there's also like purely filtered milk that seems to be more and more of a popular option for consumers. What is special about these milks?
Well, they're all special in their own rights. Take, for example, chocolate milk. 10, 12 years ago, that was a beverage that was typically targeted to kids, kind of a playful type of beverage. And slowly it's been repositioned more for something, as something for adults, high protein. Some are made with dark chocolates, slightly less sweet than the options targeted to kids. So all those kinds of new products are really value-added products for retailers. Simply put, they make more money with those products, which again, by virtue of their sort of more rigid packaging in 1 liter format, take up less shelf space. I don't want to be, it's hard to be subtle here, but grocery stores are no longer about selling food. It's about maximizing real estate. And so for the square footage or the surface of those bags, you can put different kinds of products there and simply make more money. And in the process, perhaps, and quite possibly, meet the changing demand and preferences of consumers.
So I feel like I should ask you this question. When, then, will the 4-liter milk bag disappear from the market?
I don't have a magic crystal ball, and at this point it's just rumors, although some retailers have been complaining and mentioning that they find the supply erratic a little bit for those kinds of products, for the bag products. So there may be something there. I think over a period of 5 to 10 years, we may see those bags be phased out. But as with all things in the agri-food, in the food industry, change can happen very quickly, and the pendulum can just as quickly swing back when consumers push back or demand that something not change. So it remains to be seen how the industry will respond and react to this latest change.
Professor Lebel, as a food marketing and co-director of the Center for Sensory Studies at Concordia University, you've been looking at food habits and food consumption for quite some time. You mentioned earlier in our conversation as you were watching the world of milk unfold before your eyes when you were a student. Do you remember when 4-liter milk bags arrived on the market? Can you tell us a little bit about consumer habits then?
Yeah, not a historian, but my sense is it's around the 60s and then scaled up and accelerated in the 70s. We did away with the milk bottles, and then slowly there was some evolution to the packaging. But those bags have not changed really for decades. And so maybe it is time to consider a new form of packaging, something that may be a little bit convenient or, as your technician pointed out, can be a bit more adapted to our modern family lives.
Yeah, I've actually seen purely filtered milk just last week on the shelf. That is good until I think it's September. I mean,
yep.
that is insanely crazy. They last so long.
Well, it's interesting. What you point out is, underscores the fact that there's been technologically driven innovation, such as the product you mentioned, but that has not really been matched with packaging innovation. So maybe it is time that we look at something else. I know it sets us apart and it's a source of pride and differentiation. I have American friends visiting, and whenever we go to a supermarket, they scratch their head and they wonder what that is. Similarly, when I moved, I spent 10 years of my life in the States, and I remember when I got there, I looked at those big plastic 4-gallon jugs, and I was like, why on earth would I be buying that? Where are the bags? And I could not find them, obviously. So it does speak to the fact that we're a little bit different over here.
I'm sensing that 4-liter milk bags are part of our cultural identity here in Quebec. That might not leave the market so soon then. Professor Lebel, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon and enjoy the nice weather.